Hey everyone. So there's a few different day-night cycle scripts out there, quite a few of them that are using a lot of the same methods. The problem I tend to find with a lot of those is that they use arbitrary amounts for how fast your day or night cycle goes. I'm going to show you a way to do it so you can actually use like a number of minutes. How long do you want your 24-hour day to be? And normally it's 1,440 minutes. You could set it for 180 minutes, which would be a 3-hour long day. Right, you can actually know exactly how long your day and night's going to be. So stick with me on this and I will show you how to do that. Alright, so first things first, I just have a basic base plate file here. I've just done scripting tutorial is the name of it, saved it. The only thing I've done so far is just added this part, which is floating, and the only reason I want to do that is just to show some shadowing as the sun or moon moves across the sky, so we can test a couple of things. Aside from that, let's go ahead and get started with the actual script itself. Inside our server script service, we're going to add a script, and this is just a normal script. I'm going to go ahead and rename this real quick. We'll go ahead and rename it to day-night cycle. Like so. And then we're going to get rid of our print hello world. So what we need to do is we need to access what controls the sun moving across the sky and the moon, the time itself really in the game, which is the lighting service. So if you don't know, all of these essentially sections here are all different services, and we want to access those. So we're not going to be using the time of day or the clock time like a lot of other day-night cycle scripts end up doing. We're going to be doing something a little different. We're going to use set minutes after midnight, which is actually how the Roblox documentation recommends doing it, in fact. Although we're going to be doing it a little more complex than what they have. Theirs is a very simple one and doesn't give you as much control. So I'm going to go ahead and set up services here. So we'll do services. And I like giving my categories of things actual category titles like this. It just makes it nice and easy to see what we're doing here. So we're going to do local. I'm going to say lighting, and we're going to call this game get service, and we are of course grabbing the lighting. All right, so hopefully I can type with a mic in front of my face. This has been a problem in the past. We'll see if I can do it this time. All right, so that is the only service that we're getting in this. The only service we have to manipulate or pull any values from. So what I'm going to do next is grab some variables. So we're going to do variables, and we're going to start with our biggest, most useful part of this tutorial and what we're actually doing. So we're going to create a variable called day length. I'm going to say in a comment here that day length defines how long an in-game day is, and that's measured in minutes. So unlike a lot of other scripts for day-night cycles where they're like, oh yeah, you just set, you know, like a 0.2 for your day to how long to wait to cycle things through, and it pushes 1 second further or 1 minute further based on how fast you have it set to that. Then you have to do a bunch of math on that side of things. It isn't really as intuitive as just doing a simple minute conversion, right? So normally I would do like 180 is kind of my go-to. It makes a 3-hour day, right? 180 minutes divided by 60, that's 3 hours, 60 minutes in an hour. So what we want to do is set that this is our default. The reason we want to do that is if we go in like we're about to and change this, we always know kind of what default we decided upon at one point in time. But we could change this, like if I want to make sure that this is working, I don't want to wait 3 hours to make sure and measure it for 3 hours that it's actually working. So I'm just going to do 2 minutes. So my whole day, my whole 24-hour cycle is going to take 2 minutes to complete at the end of this here. The only other thing we're going to be able to set up as a variable that we want to actually set or change is going to be our cycle time. So cycle time is how many times per second we want to update our movement in the sun and all that kind of stuff. How many times are going to perform the check is a good way to put it. So I like 15. 15 is nice and smooth. We're gonna do 1 by default here, or at least for our little script to test for just a moment. But I will put that the default is 15 because I like that. All right, so now we've got some variables that we're not really gonna mess with to change or anything. So the first one is actually gonna be a constant. We'll do minutes in a day. This is how many minutes are in an actual day, because Roblox, despite what you might want to set for your day-night cycle, is always on a 24-hour clock. Their day-night cycle starts at 0, ends at technically 0, but it's 24, right? 2400. So we're gonna go ahead and make sure that we type in that there's 1,440 minutes in a day, which is simple. It's just 24 hours, not divided, multiplied by 60 minutes. All right, so the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get a calculation variables. This is something that we're going to break down our day length into seconds. So we're going to say day in seconds. And what this is for is we're going to be using the time function. And the time function actually works in seconds, and it kind of converts everything into seconds. Even though we'll be using set minutes after midnight, it still takes the seconds and applies it accordingly. So we actually want to deal in seconds, but we don't want to have to try to figure out, well, how long in seconds do I want to do it? So this just kind of does that conversion for us. It's a really simple conversion. Of course, we're just going to take our day length and we're going to multiply it by 60. And that gives us how many seconds our day is actually going to take, and that's our day. So then we want to come up with a specific ratio, and this is going to be the ratio to multiply our time movement by. So we're going to do time ratio, and this is going to be minutes in a day. We're going to divide that by our day in seconds. So this returns the ratio to multiply the time movement by. So essentially, when we do 1 second of a cycle, how much do we need to move time forward? Because obviously, if this were set to 1,440, we would move time forward by 1 second. And this would be 1440 divided by 1440, which would be, well, actually, the ratio still wouldn't be exactly 1-to-1. We're using this for math further on, but that is going to be right now, as a matter of fact. So the last thing we're really going to do is one more variable outside of our actual loop here, and this is the start time. So I've discovered that without setting things up a specific way, if you don't set this variable the right way, you don't always start at the time that you've set in your lighting. So here we have the clock time set to 14, right? 1400 hours, 2 p.m. basically. If you did a normal 1-to-1 scale day, did 1440 minute day, this would start at 1400 hours and it would work just like it would go 1 second at a time and so forth. Problem is if you set this to something like 2, for example, or even 180, it decides that it wants to start at midnight instead. There's some math behind it. I'm not really going to get into that. But what we are going to do is we're going to, in parentheses, we're going to perform a small calculation. We're first going to get our lighting service, and then we're going to grab a method here called getMinutesAfterMidnight. And you'll see this returns the number of minutes that have passed after midnight for the purpose of lighting. What that means is when we're getting this initially, we are getting whatever we have set here. So 14 hours, minutes after midnight, is actually 840. So that's what we're getting here, is it's returning the number 840. We're going to divide this by the minutes in a day. So what this does is this gives us the quotient from the number, or from the minutes in a normal day and the current minutes after midnight. Right? So we're then going to use that and apply it to our day in seconds. We're actually going to go ahead and multiply by our day in seconds. And this is going to return a value that we're going to take this value, we're going to add our time function, essentially how many seconds have passed since the game's been running, which helps keep it in step with the actual server time, which is nice. and then we're going to apply the time ratio to that whole calculation, and that's how we get our actual time movement. So here's where we can do this. So there's a couple ways. You can do a while true do, right? And this is an infinite loop. This will check this condition and then it will run whatever it runs. I personally, for something like this, would prefer to do a repeat until false. And what this is also an infinite loop. Difference is it will run this once guaranteed and then it checks its condition. So if for whatever reason there's an issue with the condition, it should at least still run it once, and then you can at least kind of figure out what's going on there instead of nothing happening because the condition was somehow found false in a while true do loop. You never really know. So this just kind of eliminates that. So we're gonna first start with our in scope. Here we're gonna do a current time variable, and this is simply just going to be time. So every time we start our loop and every time we loop back around to the top, we're gonna get what the new current time is. So this is using the server time to maintain consistency. Okay, so next we're gonna do lighting. We're gonna grab our set minutes after midnight method here now. So now we're not getting the minutes, we're setting the minutes. So this is what's actually going to change the time of day or the clock time on us. Same thing basically. So now we're going to, in parentheses again, because we're going to apply two calculations. The first is we're going to do our current time, and we're going to add our start time. And then we are going to multiply by our time ratio. So anytime you do a infinite loop, whether it be a repeat until false or a while true do, you need to make sure that you have some sort of wait function in here as well. So we're going to do a task.wait. If you don't have one of these, it will either crash or just throw a bunch of errors because it can't do this infinitely at the rate that you might think you could. The wait time that we're going to put in here is actually going to be 1 second divided by our cycle time. So this is where at 1, we have 1 divided by 1, which is just 1. So this will wait 1 second the way we currently have it set up. So every 1 second, it's going to come up, get the new time, however many seconds have passed, which should be 1, but it's going to be a little off because it's server time. And then it's going to go ahead and set the new minutes after midnight to be the result of this calculation here, which should end up being, in this case, whatever we need it to be for a 2-minute day to pass 1 second at a time. So let's go ahead and give this a quick test. I don't really need to play to test this. I can actually just run. So I'll hit run, and we can see that our shadow is moving every 1 second. We can look up at the sun. We can see the sun is moving every 1 second. We can go to our lighting, and we can see that the time is ticking up about 12 or so seconds every second, which is exactly what we want it to do. So this will go to nighttime as well and continue around. And this will run continuously. Now you'll notice that's a little janky doing it 2 minutes at only 1 second at a time. That's where something like 15 makes a lot more sense. So now we're updating this 15 times per second, which will end up giving us a much smoother movement in our shadows, right? If we're going this fast, of course. And of course our sun is moving much smoother as well. And you can put this up to an even higher number if you want. You could do 60 per second. Highly unnecessary for most cases. The only reason that I would set it any higher than 15 would be if I was trying to do like a really fast day like this. Now if I go to 1440 and make this just a regular 1-to-1 ratio, right? This is a full 24-hour day that this would work here. We can even actually see when we go into our lighting that every 1 second is actually 1 second in the game. And if we were able to somehow actually measure this over a course of time, you would be able to see that our shadow is moving very smoothly because it's 15 times per second. It's making whatever minute movements it needs to based on the sun's position there. So that's how we can set that up. There is a way to do some checks in here if you want to do a shorter night compared to your day, for example. The only downside of that is you kind of lose the fact that you're able to determine how long your overall day is with just the number of minutes that you want to do it in. So for that, I will leave that up to you if you want to do that. Aside from that, this is our complete script here, so go ahead and check that out. In the future, I'm going to be doing more videos in Roblox Scripting. I'm going to try and get better at this as well. This is actually the second recording of this video. If you have any suggestions for things you'd like me to cover, I am going to go over how I tend to actually do things a little bit differently in the server script service and how I just handle my scripts in general. And just let me know in the comments below if you have any other suggestions, how I can make this better, what you want to see. All of that's good for me. Otherwise, if you like this, leave a like and subscribe.